My fiancé mocked my dead mother during our engagement party, so I ended everything in front of her. Family and watched their faces shatter. I'm a 31-year-old guy, and I truly believed I'd found someone who respected the deepest parts of my including, the ones that still hurt. I met Rachel 3 months after my mother died. I was still deep in the fog of grief, just going through the motions of work and life. I barely spoke to anyone at parties, but that night, I ended up sitting alone on the balcony at a friend's get-together, staring at my drink like it held answers. Rachel sat beside me without saying a word for a full minute, then softly asked, "Who did you lose?" No small talk, no fake smiles, just that question. And for the first time in weeks, I let myself cry in front of someone. She didn't flinch. She didn't try to fix me. She just listened. She told me about her own father who passed away when she was in college, and how there's no moving on, only learning how to breathe with the weight still on your chest. That night felt like a strange kind of salvation. I thought I'd found someone who understood pain, not just observed it from a distance. Over the months that followed, Rachel became my anchor. She brought food when I forgot to eat. She knew when to give space and when to sit quietly beside me. My friends said I looked more like myself again. Even my sister said Mom would have liked her. I believed it too. Rachel admired how much I loved my mom, more so I thought. She used to say things like, "It's beautiful how you carry her memory, and you don't hide your emotions, and that's rare in men." Back then, I thought her words were sincere. But sometimes, the sweetest words rot fastest. I just didn't know it yet. Looking back, the red flags weren't red. They were wrapped in velvet and dipped in charm. That's how they slipped past me. Rachel had this biting sense of humor that I used to call unfiltered. She'd say things that shocked people, then grin like she was daring them to call her out. Most laughed it off. So did I. I told myself she was just bold confident, not cruel. But sometimes, her jokes cut a little too deep. The first time I felt it was during dinner with friends. Someone brought up how close I'd been to my mom, and Rachel leaned in and said, "Yeah, if Freud were still alive, he'd write books about this guy." Everyone laughed awkwardly. I did too, out of habit. But I felt my chest tighten like I'd been slapped in a place no one could see. Later, when I brought it up, she rolled her eyes. "Babe, it was just a joke. You're way too sensitive." She kissed my cheek and changed the subject. After that, it became a pattern. Little digs, masked as humor. "Do you think your mom would have picked my dress? God, imagine if your mom was here during wedding planning, we'd be dueling divas." Every time she said something like that, my heart sank a little. But I kept telling myself I was overreacting, that maybe I was still raw from losing mom. Maybe grief was making me soft. My best friend Marcus wasn't convinced. He pulled me aside one night and said, "Man, she's got a sharp tongue. Are you sure she respects your past?" I said yes. I wanted it to be yes. But deep down, something was beginning to gnaw at me. Something cold. Something I didn't want to name yet. I proposed on the anniversary of my mom's death. It wasn't planned that way, not exactly, but the date had always haunted me, and that year, I wanted to reclaim it, turn the grief into something hopeful. Rachel had been supportive through my worst moments, and despite the occasional off-color joke, I believed she was my person. I told myself we were healing together. That's what love does, right? She said yes before I even finished the question. We were at the lake where I used to go fishing with my mom. I thought the symbolism would mean something. Rachel cried big, dramatic tears. Hugged me, kissed me. "Your mom would have loved this ring," she said, holding it up to the sun. But her smile didn't reach her eyes. There was something theatrical about it, like she was already imagining the Instagram caption. I ignored the knot in my stomach. This was a happy moment. I needed it to be. But that night, when we called her parents to share the news, I overheard her laughing in the other room. She said, "Can you believe he proposed at his mom's death lake? So dramatic, right?" She didn't know I was standing by the door. My chest tightened. I didn't say anything. Later in bed, she cuddled into me like nothing had happened. I stared at the ceiling, trying to hold on to the version of her I'd fallen in love with. The version that sat with me when I cried, the one who brought soup and watched old home movies with me. But now, I didn't know which parts were real and which were just performance. Still, I told myself it was nerves. People say weird things under pressure. Everyone slips. Everyone laughs in private. Right. But a voice inside me whispered, "You're trying too hard to justify what should come." Naturally, engagements are supposed to be exciting, magical. At least that's what everyone says. Ours felt like walking through a minefield with a smile glued to my face. Rachel took over every aspect of the planning. Venue, guest list, even the food tasting. Anytime I voiced an opinion, she'd laugh and say, "Ah, that's cute, but let the professionals handle it." The professional, of course, was her and her overly opinionated mother, who treated me like an accessory. I went from groom-to-be to seat filler in my own relationship. One day, I gently brought up the idea of having a small tribute to my mom at the engagement party. Just a framed photo on a side table, maybe a candle, something quiet, respectful. Rachel's face twisted. "Oh my God," she groaned. "Are we seriously doing a grief shrine at our celebration? This is supposed to be about us, not your past trauma?" Her words sliced through me. I stammered, trying to explain that it wasn't about trauma, it was about honoring someone who shaped who I am, someone who should have been there. But Rachel waved me off like I was being childish. "I'm not letting this turn into a funeral reception, babe. Let it go." The worst part wasn't even what she said. It was how easily she dismissed what mattered to me, how quickly her tenderness vanished the moment my emotions didn't fit her picture-perfect narrative. The way she called my ideas emotional, but her own demands were just vision. How she'd roll her eyes when I talked about memories. How she smirked whenever anyone brought up how close I'd been to my mom. I kept telling myself it was stress, that weddings make people weird. But deep down, something was shifting, something quiet, heavy, and permanent. It all came to a head over one single photo. I found it tucked in an old album, my mom, laughing in the kitchen, flour dust on her face, mid-baking. It wasn't formal or posed, just real. The way I wanted to remember her. I had it printed and framed, planning to place it on the memory table at our engagement party. Nothing big, no speech, no spotlight, just presence. When Rachel saw it sitting on the counter, her expression soured instantly. "You're still on this?" she snapped, snatching it up. "I thought we talked about this weird shrine thing." I stayed calm, trying not to match her tone. "It's just one photo, Rachel. I'm not asking for a eulogy, just a quiet way to include her." She stared at the picture like it personally offended her. "You're obsessed, you know that. It's been years. Most people move on." My chest burned. "Grief isn't something you check off a list," she scoffed. "You're turning our engagement into a pity party." What's next? Playing her favorite songs during dinner. A moment of silence before cake. I wanted to yell. I wanted to scream, to break something. But instead, I just stood there, holding onto the edge of the counter, like it was the only thing keeping me grounded. "I'm not trying to make this about her," I whispered. "I'm just trying not to erase her." Rachel rolled her eyes and walked out of the room, muttering, "You seriously need therapy." That night, I didn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling and wondered how someone who once held my pain so gently could now weaponize it. For the first time, I let myself wonder, what if the woman I loved never really saw me at all? It came out of nowhere like betrayal often does. My sister Ella had never fully warmed up to Rachel. She was polite, but always distant, and I chalked it up to sibling protectiveness. One night, a few weeks before the engagement party, she called me, sounding hesitant. "Hey, I need to send you something," she said, "but you need to promise you'll listen to it alone." I was confused. She forwarded me a voice memo. It was a recorded call Rachel on speakerphone with two of her bridesmaids, gossiping and laughing. Ella had overheard it while visiting a mutual friend and recorded it because, in her words, "You deserve to hear it with your own ears." I sat on the couch and hit play. Rachel's voice filled the room, crystal clear and sharp. "He still cries when he talks about his mom," like actual tears. "I swear, if he asks to light a candle at the party, I'm gonna lose it. I can't be married to a guy who needs therapy every time someone says mommy. He's lucky I'm this patient." Laughter, more mockery. A joke about walking down the aisle holding an urn. My ears rang. I replayed it 3 times, hoping I'd misunderstood. But there it was. The woman I was about to marry wasn't just insensitive. She was cruel and comfortable being cruel when she thought I wasn't listening. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there, completely still. It was like the air had been punched out of my lungs. I realized I hadn't been grieving with her, I'd been grieving around her, and she'd been watching. Amused. Something in me broke. but not in the fragile way. It broke in a clear way. For the first time, I saw her without the grief-tinted glasses. I didn't confront her right away. Something in me wanted to believe there was more to it, some twisted misunderstanding. I needed to see, with my own eyes, if this cruelty was a one-time lapse or the mask slipping off for good. So I played dumb. I acted like everything was normal, like I hadn't just heard the woman I loved reduce my grief to a punchline. A few days later, while we were finalizing table placements for the party, I brought up the photo again calmly, carefully. I was thinking, maybe we could have a small table near the entrance with a few family pictures. Yours, mine, one of my mom. Rachel didn't even look up from her laptop. Jesus, you're still on that? It's important to me, I said, trying not to let my voice shake. Just one photo. That's it. She slammed her laptop shut and looked at me like I'd suggested we sacrifice a goat in the foyer. This is supposed to be our celebration, she snapped. You want to turn it into a grief parade? I swear, you and your dead mom have more intimacy than we do. The room went dead silent. I didn't speak. I couldn't, she stormed out, muttering something about emotional manipulation and needing space. I just stood there, numb-dot. That was it. The final confirmation. There was no misunderstanding, no missing context. Rachel didn't just resent my grief. She resented the part of me that loved my mother, the part she once pretended to nurture. The image of her sitting beside me on that balcony months ago, asking, "Who did you lose?" It felt like a lie now, a performance. And I hated that I couldn't tell the difference back then. But now, I could, and I knew exactly what I had to do. I didn't cancel the engagement party to everyone else. It probably looked like I was taking the high road keeping things together. Moving forward, being the bigger person, but inside, I wasn't trying to save the relationship anymore. I was planning its funeral, one that Rachel would never see coming. There was a moment, a very specific one, when I realized I didn't want revenge out of rage. I wanted clarity. For her, for me, for the people who thought they knew who she was. So I reached out to Ella and showed her the recording. She was furious, but when I told her my plan, she didn't hesitate. "Whatever you need," she said. "Let's burn the mask off her." I called the event coordinator and asked for one small favor during the toasts. I wanted to play a short tribute video as a surprise. I said it was for Rachel. That it was a compilation of memories and sweet words from family and friends. The coordinator smiled and said, "That sounds beautiful. It would be, just not for Rachel." I edited the audio clip myself. I sandwiched her voice between soft music and photos of my mother. I timed her laughter, her cruel jokes to fade into silence as the last photo of my mom filled the screen. No screaming, no accusations, just her own words, raw, undeniable. I also made sure both families would be there. Her judgmental mother, her perfectly groomed father, her cousins, friends, bridesmaids, the ones who had laughed with her on the recording. I wanted every single one of them to see her. Rachel kept asking me why I was so calm. She thought it meant I'd moved on from the fight. I had just not in the way she imagined. The venue was beautiful exactly how Rachel envisioned it. String lights wrapped around oak beams, ivory linens draped over long farmhouse tables, soft jazz playing beneath the hum of wine glasses and polite laughter. Rachel floated through the room in her white dress like she owned the night. She kissed cheeks, posed for selfies, laughed a little too loud. She had no idea what was coming when it was time for the speeches. The event coordinator tapped her glass and asked everyone to gather near the stage. Rachel clutched my hand and whispered, "Please don't cry when you talk about your mom." I didn't wear waterproof mascara. I smiled, took the mic. "Thank you all for being here tonight," I began, steady and slow. This celebration was supposed to honor love. But tonight, I want to honor something else, truth. A beat. Then I nodded at the coordinator. The lights dimmed, the screen lit up. It began with a soft instrumental track and a few family photos me as a kid with my mom. Birthdays, vacations, her smiling as she helped me with homework. The room was still reverent and it cut. Rachel's voice boomed through the speakers. He still cries when he talks about his mom, like actual tears. The laughter that followed was deafening in the silence. He'll probably want to light a candle at the party. I swear, if he brings that urn, gasps, murmurs. The screen faded to black with a final photo. my mother's hand resting on mine in the hospital, the last picture we ever took together. I looked out at the crowd. Rachel was frozen, her wine glass shaking, mascara already smudging. "This is the woman I was going to marry," I said quietly, "but I refuse to build a future with someone who mocks my past." And then I placed the ring box on the mic stand and walked off the stage. The silence that followed was deafening. No one moved at first. It was like the entire room had shook. I could hear the soft clink of the ring box against the metal mic stand still vibrating, like it refused to let go of the moment. And then came the chaos. Rachel rushed toward me, heels clicking hard against the floor, her voice shrill. "You set me up. You embarrassed me in front of everyone." I turned to face her, calm as ice. "No, Rachel, you did that." I just held up a mirror. Her mother's face was beet red, and her father looked like he wanted to disappear. Friends awkwardly shifted, avoiding her eyes. The same bridesmaids who laughed with her on that call were now frozen, some covering their mouths. Others wide-eyed with shock. Rachel tried to spin it. It was a joke, a private conversation. "You're blowing this out of proportion." "You mocked my dead mother," I said, my voice lower now. "There's no proportion to that." She stepped closer, desperation crawling into her voice. "You're seriously going to throw everything away over one recording?" I didn't answer. I didn't have to. Instead, I walked past her, past the guests, past the shameful faces pretending not to stare. I pushed open the door to the cool night air and didn't look back, not once. Outside, Ella was waiting by the car. She handed me my overnight bag and didn't say a word, just gave me a hug so tight I almost cracked. That was the first time I cried that night. Not for Rachel, not even for my mom. I cried because I finally realized just how long I'd been holding it all in. The next morning, my phone was a war zone. Dozens of missed calls. Rachel, her mom, her bridesmaids, even her cousin who barely spoke to me at family gatherings, left a voice message dripping with judgment that was beyond petty. "You humiliated her, right? Because mocking a dead parent behind closed doors was totally classy." I didn't reply to any of them. I stayed at Ella's place for a few days, somewhere quiet, where I could think without the weight of Rachel's perfume still clinging to my sheets. She made me coffee in the mornings and didn't ask for updates. Just sat beside me on the porch while I stared at the trees and tried to breathe without my chest tightening. Rachel sent an email on the third day, a long one. She claimed the audio was taken out of context, said it was a venting session, and begged me to talk. She said we could go to couples therapy, that we could fix this. I didn't respond. There was nothing left to fix. I wasn't angry anymore, just hollow. Grief for what I thought I had, for the version of her I invented in my mind, for the man I became, trying to earn her compassion. Friends started reaching out to people I hadn't seen in months, said they were proud of me, that I handled it with grace. Some admitted they'd always felt something off about Rachel, but didn't know how to say it. That stung more than I expected, because deep down, I had known to. I just didn't want to face it. I thought loving her meant enduring the parts that hurt. I thought compromise meant shrinking myself. But now, for the first time in years, I was standing at full height alone, yes? But finally, hold on, it's been 8 months since that night. The storm passed, but it left its marks like rainwater stains on drywall, subtle but permanent. I've moved into a small apartment across town. Nothing fancy, but it's mine. It's quiet. No more second-guessing if my feelings are too much. No more walking on eggshells in my own home. I keep my mom's photo on the bookshelf, now no candles, no tribute table. Just her, smiling in the kitchen like she always did, frozen in the kind of joy that doesn't ask for permission to exist. I see her every day, and that's enough. Some days I still hear Rachel's voice in my head. Not the cruelty, though, that echoes too, but the tenderness she once faked. The way she used to say, "You're the most emotionally intelligent man I've ever met." I used to wear that like a badge of honor now. I see it for what it was. Bait. I've learned that some people are drawn to vulnerability not to cherish it, but to control it. To study your pain like a roadmap so they can press every bruise when it suits them. Rachel wasn't just mocking my grief. She resented that she couldn't erase it, that I had a part of me she couldn't touch. I went to my mom's grave last week, took fresh sunflowers, her favorite, sat in silence for a while, just letting the wind speak. I told her everything, not just about Rachel, but about how I finally chose myself, about how I stopped apologizing for loving her, for remembering her, and then I said something I hadn't been able to before. I didn't lose Rachel that night. I lost the illusion that she ever really saw me, and that felt like peace.